What's up? So I'm gonna show how to make a bow drill, primitive fire making technique. And with a little bit of practice and some good quality material like this Western juniper, you can make a bow drill fire rather quickly. It took me 3 months of a lot of angry breaking everything because it wasn't working to finally get a fire. But that's to say that with some quick instruction, after a while it came quick. So I hope to provide enough information to make the process of learning the bow drill quicker than it was for me. So you'll need a good knife like this Moore knife, a hatchet, which this one's beat to shit, but it'll do. So there's 4 pieces to make a bow drill, and I'm going to use these blanks to make the 4 pieces. And the 4 pieces are a handhold, fits comfortably in your hand, a bow. This one's out of Osage orange, a good bow wood for natural self bows, but this I used to make this flex bow, but it's about as long as your arm. And if you're using dry or green wood, you just want to have a slight bend in the wood. The blanks I'm using for the spindle and the baseboard, the other 2 pieces. This is one that already is pretty much a good baseboard piece, about as thick as your thumb. And the width, you want to give yourself enough space, or the length of the board, you want to give yourself space to have plenty of room for multiple holes that are going to be made with the spindle. So thumb width, a nice long piece of wood. And then this is the obscenely large piece of wood that I'm going to use for the spindle. I'm going to use my already made Osage orange flex bow. It's about as long as your arm. It's got a natural bend to it, and this one has a natural flex, which just makes loading the spindle, which isn't shown here yet, but it makes loading the spindle easier. So the spindle, you want about as long as your shaka. For me is 9 inches, maybe a little bit more, like 10 inches. And you want it to be about the thickness of the widest part of your thumb. So just start taking off some meat. Start chunking. Save all these little pieces to make your fire, right? That's good stuff. Always wear sandals when you're using sharp things as well. Super good for you. So I'm just roughing it out right now, and I don't care too much about form, and it'll save you a lot of time to either take as much off with the hatchet or use your knife and a good old bludgeon stick to take off meat like this. Just like this. And this. And that's another good way to take off a lot of meat at once, or else you'll be spending a lot of time carving, which is fun, but it just takes a lot of time. Always put the knife away when you're not using it so you don't cut your little chubby piggies off. say about right there. Obviously you could use a saw for this part. I'm just going caveman on this shit. Okie dokie. So I said earlier I don't care about form. I 100% do care about form. And the reason being is you want this thing to be as straight as possible when you sight down the spindle. You want the spindle to be as straight as possible, and this one's got a little swoopty. So as you're carving it, you're sighting down the spindle. And you turn, and I don't know if I'm doing it, but I hope I am. You wanna, when you carve, a little knife skill here, when you carve, you pull with your holding hand and you push at the same time, and that gives you more control, and you're using less energy, and you're not messing your wrist up if you're just trying to carve with one hand. So and this wood is carving really good. It's not hard to carve this wood, and it really helps to have a fairly sharp knife too. Now if you're younger and you do this at your parents' house, you gotta make sure to clean up all your bullshit, because parents get mad at that stuff, even though they shouldn't. They should be like, Timmy, keep doing it. You're learning and using your body and shit, and that's good. But you know, Timmy, you gotta clean up after yourself. And get yourself a leaf blower. I mean, shoot. So, still taking down the spindle to the desired width of about the thicker part of my thumb. And this thing is carving pretty straight. Sometimes if the wood has a little bend to it, your knife will start to follow kind of the way the wood grows, and you'll end up with a curve. So you have to constantly kind of sight down it to make sure it's straight. And luckily, this one is staying straight as I'm carving. And the form is starting to look good. It's getting way more, it's getting nice and conical and round in the profile. It's really nice. Little bird alarm over there. That's the other thing, as you're doing your deeds, challenge yourself to be aware of what's going on around you as you're working on these projects, but not so much that you cut your thumb. And this feels really good for me because I've been on the computer all day, and this can be a really good way to use your body a little bit and create something cool, connect to the material that naturally grows around you. So you can see pretty straight. And now we're starting to get to the point where we're looking to see which end is going to be the top, where we're the top, which is going to hold, which is going to sit underneath the handhold. The top is going to be taller with less surface area, and then the bottom is going to be a little bit more shallow in profile. Maximum surface area on the baseboard. Maximum surface area on that baseboard, baby. So now we're getting really close with the spindle. Again, it's about 9 inches, one shaka. I think I'm going to use this end as my taller end. It's got a longer taper. You bring it to a sharp point. And this is going to be my shorter end. Again, that's going to hit and make contact with that baseboard. We're getting closer, we're getting closer. You gotta find yourself the most comfortable seat ever, like this wet log. That really helps concentrate and, you know, helps you learn. It really does help learn to have a, you know, when your ass hurts. Hey mom. Hey mom. These aren't fetches. I'm not carving you good fetches right now. This is for the business. This is for the business. You gotta have a security chunk for when your awareness is low and you're missing the bird calls and your friends could be trying to mess with you or whatever. So we're almost at thumb thickness on this shorter end. And I'm gonna whittle this down a little bit more. You always want to keep the tinder bundle in a dry spot too, not like what I just did and leave it in on the wet ground, but you can see the spindle is now nice and shallow. And it's about thumb width. And a lot of the width and all of that also is wood depending on how hard or soft your wood that you choose is. So keep that in mind as you practice and use different woods. You'll find what works best for you. But I tend to like about thumb thickness or a little bit smaller even. So after a while too, you'll feel when it's ready. After you've made whatever, 20, 30 of these, you'll know when it's ready. Will it work? Hopefully. And you'll just feel when it's ready. That's all I gotta say about that. And it's very close. Let me clean that up a little bit. So this is a fairly completed spindle, and you know, sometimes I have to adjust it when you're actually bowing and you're trying to make the fire when you're there. But for the most part, there's a spindle about a shaka wide or long. You got that tall long taper for the top that's gonna meet your handhold, and then you have the shallow end that's gonna meet the baseboard. Boom. Now I'm gonna make this guy really quick. So your handhold Should fit comfortably in your hand. It can be smaller than this. The handhold is usually a harder piece of wood or even a stone or a shell, something that will not take as much friction as the baseboard. The handhold, ideally, when it's working properly, you'll almost feel like the spindle's floating as you're bowing, because it's running across a burnished smooth surface and not a friction surface that's producing dust. So handhold fits comfortably in the hand, and I'm just going to carve a little notch in the center of this. And when I think about it, I want the hole kind of to be, if you were to take this layer off when I'm actually doing the action of bowing, you want the hole to kind of be in the center of your palm, because the weight of your entire body when you're kneeling is going to be going in. The weight is going to be distributed through your shoulders, into your arm, down from your core, down through your shoulders, into your arm, into this handhold. So you want that hole to be in the center of your palm, so you can get optimum pressure down into the handhold. Okay. You don't need much of a hole to start. You don't need to bust your Makita out and drill a hole all the way through this piece of wood. You just need enough of indentation to hold the spindle top, like this. My last piece is my baseboard. So this is the last piece of the process. This is the baseboard. Luckily, when I split it, it split really good. And a good place to look for baseboards is on a tree that's broken in a storm. Maybe it's been there for a few years, the wood is cured, and a lot of times those trunks in the forest will have perfectly cleaved off nice strips. Or maybe you need to use a wedge or something to pry off these strips, but a lot of times you can either pull them off by hand, or it's just some quick work with an axe or a knife. In this case, I was just opportunistic and found an old lonely fence post in the middle of the high desert, and I was like, you're perfect, you're beautiful. And I took it. So this is my baseboard. Thumb width, already thumb width. And about as long as I can get it, nice and flat on the bottom, so it's not rocking on the ground when your foot's pressed on it. That's important. So the next part of, we're moving from making the pieces to making the fire. And the next step is burning in your hole. Your hole gets placed about a 1/4 inch from the edge of the baseboard. And first thing you need to do is make a notch where you want the spindle to rest on the baseboard. So what you can do when you know about where you want your spindle to go is you press the point into the wood, which gives you a little mark to start with. And then what I like to do is with my knife, I kind of cut out a square in the wood And I chip that out. And that's where the spindle is gonna hit. And that helps guide the spindle to its final resting place in the wood. And just because we haven't covered the how yet, as this spins with the action of the bow, it creates dust. And as you speed up and dust collects, you get a coal in the spindle, in the notch that you form after you burn in the hole. And that notch provides a little cradle for the dust to collect, heat up, and turn into a coal when you create the appropriate conditions with both speed and pressure, downward pressure from the handle. So while we're here, we'll go over form really quick. I usually have a sandal or a beanie for my knee because I got old man knees from wrestling. But you generally want a 90-degree angle in your legs. And this is all towards structure because this is a tiring action. So when you're making the fire, you want to have the best structure in your body that you can so that you don't fatigue as quickly. And using your body, using the weight of your body to press down instead of just your arm, which some people do when they're first learning, is better. So use the weight of your body. And a note on loading the spindle, this is one of the most confusing things. I always say bottoms up. So you take the bottom of your spindle, you load it on the inside of your string. I like to put the bow in my armpit so that I can use both hands. And then you coil the spindle around the string. Bottoms up turns into bottoms down. And then you have and then your bow is ready to bow. Oops. Let's do that again. So you have bottoms up, bow in the armpit. You twist the spindle around with the help of both your hands. And then you have the spindles now on the outside of the string. Start on the inside, now it's on the outside. The longer tapered end is facing up and you're ready to go. So when you bow, you want your foot, you want the center of your foot right next to the hole, as close to the hole as you can get. Your arm is fully connected to your leg, and the crook of your hand, that little crook right there, fits perfectly snugly in the pocket of, creates a little pocket for the shin to rest in. And this gives you stability as you're bowing. So when you start bowing, you want to use the full length of the bow, just as if you were sawing. You start out slow until you gain heat. And again, my back straight. I'm moving at my shoulder. A lot of times when you're new at this, you'll want to move at the elbow, and that will cause the string to ride up and down the spindle. So move at the shoulder. And now we're creating heat. We're getting a little smoke. You also want to try to keep the spindle straight up and down. It's still hard for me to do that. you get a squeak, it usually means you need to put more pressure. You'll get the worst freaking squeak you ever heard in your life. Another way you'll try to break it out of anger is from the death squeal that comes from the bow drill. So my spindle now is burnished, is burnt in to the diameter of my spindle. The baseboard hole is burnt in to the diameter of the spindle. If you don't burn it in to the diameter of the spindle, it'll slip right out when you carve your notch. So the next thing we're gonna go over is carving the notch into your baseboard. And what you want to do is you make a little pie right before the center of the hole. So the pie point, the tapered point, goes at the center of the hole. And then you mark down the edge of the wood where you want the, so you have the pie at the center of the hole. See, the pie's at the center of the hole there. Mark down the edges of the wood where I'm gonna carve right there. And then the way I like to carve this is just using my thumb and just kind of chipping out pieces of wood. And this is a part that's easy to mess up. You don't want this notch too big or too small. So just be careful, and it's kind of a feel thing. Too big, the spindle slips out when you're bowing. Too small, it doesn't provide a good enough cradle to let that little ember baby grow. Switch it over. And this is really nice. Ooh. That could have been catastrophic right there if you lose enough wood. If you lose enough wood when you're carving off the edge like that, depending on how brittle the wood is, you may just lose that work. So again, I'm in Sonoma County, California, but a note on wood around here: redwood's really good, willow's really good. Those are the two most popular ones probably along the coast. Other spindle woods I've seen used, more so for hand drill, but things like, and I've also heard they can be used for bow drill, but things like mullein, elderberry, cattail, these are all good woods for bow drill and hand drill. So those are all good woods for hand drill and bow drill. So there's a pretty good notch. So now I'm gonna try to get a little coal, and then hopefully blow that coal into flame. So you also want something to catch your coal. So there it is. Something to catch the coal. I'm just gonna take a little bit more meat off. So you can't really, I'll just get down here and lay down and show you guys this. You want to grease up that, not that end. Oh, actually, yes, that end. You want to grease the top end up so that it slips. You want this side to be burnished. You want the shallow side to have friction. So you got to burnish this as much as you can so that it slips seamlessly, flawlessly in that little joint right there. There's the desk wheel, a little bit more pressure. When the smoke really starts to billow is when I'll speed up. Speed up when I see that smoke thicken. And that coal's a nice, soft texture. And when you start seeing the smoke billows, when you really speed up until you see the smoke start coming out of that coal. Just like that. Now that's a big coal. You can let that grow for a little while. So now we go round two. Now we go round two because I didn't quite get that one. It formed a coal, but then the coal went out. So we try again. A lot of these skills are just about persisting when it doesn't work, readjusting and trying again. This one's smoking like the last one. We'll hope it'll stay alive. You just give it a little bit of air. Now don't just throw that straight into the tinder bundle. You have time. So what you do, got a little situation here. Create a little, you can pack this down a little bit. And you just drop it right in the little depression you make, just like that. And you're very gentle with it. It's a wee babe. Very gently Start giving it some air, hold it away from your face. Just giving a little bit of air at first, and as the coal grows, you give it more. There you go. Little fire, little bow drill. Now you'd wanna, I just kind of dropped it and whatever. But that being said, if you were in a survival situation or you're just making this fire for your house or whatever, you would take that tinder bundle and have a fire structure already ready to go. So there's a little bit of preparation involved. You have that fire structure already ready to go, and you throw that tinder bundle straight in the ready to go fire structure, so you don't have to worry about that. You're not scrambling. There is a little bit of preparation and thought, and the more care you put into making the bow drill set and making the fire structure, the more success you're gonna have. And that goes for harvesting too. As you're around the landscape harvesting, taking the time to harvest the right material is extremely important. So that's how you make a bow drill fire. Yeah. Oop.